Hello, welcome to my channel. Okay, today I'm going to be showing you how I roughly make my character portraits in around 20 minutes or less. Right, as soon as I make a project, I open a black underscore void, and if you use a preset map, stop. I tend to use the same camera settings across projects, so what I do is make the FOV minimal and turn off bloom scale because bloom scale has the mega gay. Go to progressive refinement and make sure your depth of field samples are cranked up to 1024. Disable motion blur and AO, and that just reduces render times. Keep in mind the higher the samples, the longer the render time, but you do get better lighting as a result.
Time to do the posing.
Go ahead and slap a big old white panel behind your character. Okay, now we start the painful process that is lighting. You can do these in any order, but I tend to just do the rim lights first, or the backlights, whatever you want to call them. So what I do for the rim lights is I put the look behind the character, remap the radius to 800, crank that all the way up, change the shadow filter size to 0.92, drag the shadow attenuation slider all the way to 0, put shadow depth bias to 0.92, and crank up that linear attenuation. Next up, I do the key light. For the key light, I don't really change the settings too much. I just make it a bit less intense than the backlight. Maybe mess around with the FOV a bit, and hey presto. Put it on one side of the character, and you got a key light. For the fill light, just do the same thing. Put it on the other side of the character, make it a bit less intense. Maybe make the FOV a bit higher so you can fill in the shadows, and there you go, you got a fill light, and that completes the 3-point lighting. Now, whilst in post, I realised the shadows aren't really filled to the degree that I like, so I'm just gonna make a quick ambience render which fills in all the shadows for me. I changed the settings for ambient lights. I remapped the radius to around 1200, put that all the way up, lower the intensity a bit and make it the maximum FOV on both sliders. Finally, I just add like a basic light bounce. light, which I put underneath the character to make it look like there's like a concrete floor below them or something. Makes it look a bit more interesting. I forgot to mention this earlier, but make sure your layers are all screens when you put them into your editing software, but leave the base one as a normal. Mess around with the layer opacities too, you don't want them all to be 100%. I then add a subsurface scattering new layer, which is a light and only layer. I do that to all the exposed skin, and I make it more prominent in like the thinner parts of the skin, like around the ears and nose. It's advised you turn down the layer opacity too. You don't want it to be too noticeable, but it's best to have it somewhat visible too. I also like adding some chromatic aberration. Makes it look more like a photograph or something. Once all the layers are to my liking, I add a background after removing like the big black void they're in. I like to put like a monochrome gradient most of the time, but you can, put anything you want back there. A lot of my character portraits use a lot of focus blur because I want certain parts of the image to be the focus point, so I duplicate the main layer and then do the focus blur on the top one and then merge them down. Adding noise can do a lot to make your picture look more realistic and photo-like, but make sure you make the dulling like really intense. You don't want it to be very noticeable. It's definitely better to do the bloom post-processing instead of in-engine, because you can really control how much bloom you have in your image. Sometimes I have bloom before I do the noise, but it works just as well doing it afterwards.